Hi folks, and welcome to the Fat File. I'm Gary Hennessy, and today we have a special treat. We've come along to Back in Motion at Brighton, and we're going to have a chat to Max Kavanagh. Now Max, you were helping me because I had a back problem about 3 or 4 or 5 months ago before I started on this journey of losing weight, which, by the way, you and my doctor and my nutritionist and about 15 other people said I needed to do. What, from a medical point of view, you looked at me when I first came here with overweight completely and really bad back. What was the problem that I was suffering from at that time?
I think the problems stem quite often not just from the load of the weight that people have. It's also the fact that because they've had pain, they lose a lot of muscle control.
Yep.
And the muscles that are controlling you are the postural deep muscles of your spine, as well as they work with your pelvis and your lower back, as well as your abdominals. And the combination of those muscles need to be constantly reinforced to make sure that the loads on your spine aren't dramatic and causing aches and pains.
Okay. Now you gave me some little exercises, some little pelvic tilts and stuff to strengthen the internal core muscles. I think you were talking about, wasn't it, in the centre of my spine and my stomach, because everything worked backwards with me, didn't it?
It wasn't that it worked backwards really, it was just that it didn't work much
at all. That's right,
yeah.
Yes.
But basically what it is, it's a learning curve. When we have chronic pain, or long-term pain I should say, the problems are that we reinforce the negative way that we've been moving for a long period of time. So it's like learning something new. It's like learning to have a better tennis swing, change your golf grip. It actually requires you to practice. It takes 6 to 8 weeks to learn a new pattern of movement and 12 weeks to consolidate it. Now that's why people don't do it. So it has to be something that we coach you through, and once you've learnt the pattern you can start taking it in. So that's what we use our clinical Pilates for.
Right. So you work with people who have injuries, but in this case we're not focusing on my injury. I was talking to Max about, do I need any exercise now that I'm losing weight? Because I thought, oh great, lose a lot of weight, won't need to exercise. But in actual fact, you were saying to me that I need to do a set of exercises for my body to strengthen, because I don't have all this other padding around. Is that something like that you said?
It's more a case of being able to cope with the increased amount of load that you're doing in terms of workload and exercise you're doing.
Yeah.
But also, yes, you're right, by decreasing the weight, you are transferring, or changing I should say, the loads on your tissues and on your joints. Right. So it is a matter of making sure that you gradually build, in terms of control, the needs to make sure your posture is still being addressed. Okay. And you mustn't, what people make the mistake of thinking is, I'm going to get fit, so they decide off they go and they run and they do a lot of exercise, and unfortunately that can reinforce the negative pattern of movement that they may have, in which case they get injuries. The downside to that is, of course, then they'll throw the baby out with the bathwater, because it all gets too hard. Trying to exercise becomes difficult. So we talk to you about the fact that you need to mix up your exercise programs, make sure that you're not doing the same thing all the time, and that can even include things like changing the pattern of your walking that you're doing, in terms of where you do it, whether you do incorporate some other activities like bike, whether you incorporate some pool work or some swimming. All of these things can help an awful lot.
Okay. So, we're going to now talk about some sets of exercises that I need to start looking at over and above the pelvic tilts and all that sort of stuff. So what are we trying to achieve with these exercise sets?
Well, it's really up to you what you want to achieve. And this is when we talk to anyone, we always want to find out what their actual goals are. Right. Now, obviously, what we do then is spend time with you and find out what your real goals are. We know that you want to lose weight, but it has to be a little bit more than that. Your goal is to make sure you keep that weight down, but also to keep your pains under control and make sure you don't get any recurring problems at all. So what we'd look at is a general routine. Find out the things you actually enjoy doing first, because if you enjoy doing something, you're much more likely to continue that afterwards, as well as which exercise routines could be helpful for you, and set up a program accordingly to make you accountable to those. So the idea is to make sure you are measuring what you do, and I know you're measuring with your pedometer.
Absolutely, we're measuring what we eat, and not so much calories, because we're not counting calories, but we're certainly measuring food intake, we're measuring blood sugars. So what you're saying is, for an exercise program to be successful, you need to record and measure that as well.
Yes, you do, and you have to have a mixture of exercise. Right. It's not much point in just walking, for instance, because walking, while it is good for you, is only using certain musculature that you're building up. It is important that you have a nice mix. If we're talking about general fitness, then we need to look at a general exercise program as well. So it doesn't have to be exercise for the sake of exercise. It could be an activity that you enjoy, being a sport like lawn bowls, or even a bit of a head of tennis with a family member can be enough. It can also include shopping. Activities that you do when you're out and about all add up, so it's important to do that.
To see that actually. All right. So what happens if I'm doing an exercise and it causes me pain? Do I just go, don't do that anymore, or how do we manage that?
You do listen to your body, of course. There is a difference between the discomfort you get from exercise, from a new exercise you haven't done before, which brings on a generalised soreness in tissues, usually in muscle bellies. But that is contrasted to something that's a local pain that's reproduced with a repeatable movement or when you do a certain activity, and it backs off when you rest. So the point is, you mustn't ignore those sorts of pains. When you have a recurring pain, you need to deal with it. It's the body's way of telling you, don't push on in that aspect. And so it's important to listen to the body and to react and respond to that by by providing some local treatment in terms of the RISA mechanism. And we've talked about that. Always make sure you rest, which means back off from the aggravating activity. It doesn't mean rest completely. We've also mentioned the fact that motion is your friend. By keeping mobile all the time, you're giving feedback to the nervous system, and the body is then going to react in a much better way. Ice means to actually give yourself some cold packs in terms of properly applying those every couple of hours, 15 to 20 minutes, never longer than 20 minutes. The compression is for any aches and pains that can be controlled with a compression bandage in the limbs, for instance. And the elevation, if you can elevate the part, then it's worthwhile. But the most important of all of those is icing, and it's the one thing that people don't actually spend a lot of time on, because they need to understand 2 days of icing is the minimum to make sure you get inflammation under control.
Cool. Now, as I get lower down in my weight, am I going to have to do a lot more exercise to maintain that, or is it it's not related? I don't have to do 3 times as much exercise to be at this weight as I did at this weight, or is that?
No, obviously I'm not a nutritionist in that aspect, or a dietitian in that area, but as a general rule, what we talk about is making sure that you're balancing the ins and the outs. It's a simple matter of making sure you're keeping your activity levels up to a degree that's monitoring how much you're eating. Now obviously what you're doing at this stage is monitoring your diet and modifying your diet. It's important to make sure that that turns into a diet that you actually enjoy, and over time that should do so. But at the same time, we want you to enjoy the exercise we're doing, because it's always going to be balanced. If you go through all this routine and then just stop any activity altogether, then that balance is not going to be even again, and you'll start to put weight back on. But at the same time, what you do want to do is make sure you pick something you enjoy. And that's why we spend a lot of time with clients, to make sure we talk about what actually do they enjoy doing. Do you have a partner to help you with the motivation? Do you have a particular activity or a hobby that is your favourite? In which case we can usually incorporate some sort of exercise into that as well.
Cool. All right, well, that's where we're at the moment. We're going to have a talk now about some different exercises I need to get into, and we'll catch you soon. Thanks.